Welcome back! Okay, now that our last video in this series has helped you fix up your keybinds, it's time to revamp your UI. Now, your UI, that is how the game communicates with you, right? It's so important. And Blizzard's default is from nearly 20 years ago. It is barely fit for purpose, even with the game mechanics that Blizzard themselves actually make. So, today, I've got great news. We're going to hook you up with a few fully thought out presets. One of them is designed as a catch-all solution. You just import it, hit go, bam, you're done. And the other one is designed to work in tandem with a few incredible weak auras that are just so awesome for playing your specs. And what's more, we're also going to teach you the principles of how to actually make an awesome gameplay-focused UI. So you can learn that and take what we've done and then tweak it to your own personal perfection. So it'll be a real fun video. Now, one thing, you know, of course, about the monthly loot that we have over on Patreon, but that's actually not all that goes on there, because we have behind-the-scenes content too. Stuff like my desk setup, how I make coffee, and more recently, a general tour of the state of the office, as well as a pretty deep look into how I actually make and plan our WoW content using Roam Research, plus the AI music app that I use to work to. Fun stuff there. There's also the daily briefing where our news team gets you the daily game industry news, right? It's a really quick, super handy thing that's a newsletter that also goes through to your email, so you can quickly read it and get caught up. And there's also early access to content where we post things as soon as they are finished production, editing. So, thank you for all the support. That is the other stuff you get on Patreon, and post Shadowlands, we're going to be doubling down on behind the scenes and some more experimental Patreon content as well. Okay, with that said, let's get into the video. Let's talk about one of those things that really hits my weak spot and rustles up my jimmies: WoW UIs. A UI is supposed to show you the data that you need in order to make decisions. I mean, in a car, your speedometer is generally quite prominent in your dashboard so that you can, see it at a glance. Your fuel gauge, well, it's a bit smaller because it's less important, and those principles apply to World of Warcraft. What we have to do is show you the info that you need in a way that is easy to digest, and for this video's goals, both easy to use and also easy to set up. I've got a question for you. Where do you look the most when you're playing World of Warcraft? Well, if you're a DPS player, then you probably look at your abilities, your resources, the world around your character, and your target's nameplates. Look where those are by default. Insane, right? They're so far apart from each other. And that's the thing. We're not playing World of Warcraft in small 15-inch monitors anymore. Blizzard's UI design is a relic of a bygone age. Take a look at these UIs instead, and pay attention to where the same information is. Yeah, being able to see everything you need without having to look away is an important part of being able to play the game comfortably. So, we know that showing information clearly is important. The question then is, what information actually matters, and what information is just clutter? Do you remember the Burning Crusade and Wrath era UIs? They were pretty rough. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. They were total information overload. And if you want to do some homework, pause this video and try to see how many things are unnecessary in this UI. The answer is most things. Now, yes, it's an egregious example, but the point here is that you need a surprisingly small amount of information to play World of Warcraft. And as with key bindings, it's worth breaking stuff down to the very basics and thinking in terms of some nice, simple principles. First, solo play. You've got a few different categories of things to keep on top of when you're playing solo. Your abilities, resources, buffs, debuffs, and health. This is the most important information, so it does need to be the most visible. Now, you can go deeper, but for now, we can just say that this stuff needs to be on screen when you are in combat. Now, this information can be on the left, right, or below, depending on your preference. I would say just to the left of the screen, but just make sure that basically, you can see what is around your character while still having this info being displayed. That is absolutely key to gameplay, and of course, don't have all of your abilities at the very bottom of the screen. Yes, that is what the default is, but it's just too far away for your eyes. Then there is your enemy, their name, health, resources, cast bar, and buffs and debuffs. Well, those are extremely important in combat, and usually people will put this on the right or the lower right, of course being symmetrical with where they put their player information. Now, of course, you can move this somewhere, a bit less prominent if you're primarily looking at your target nameplates, though, whatever works for you. Of course, you often don't need to know more than what the nameplate can show you in moment-to-moment gameplay, so basically, just getting that right means you're fine. And that's it. You're good for solo, but of course, most of the game is not solo. When playing in a party, you need to see information about your allies. You will need their names, health, resources, and some buffs and debuffs. And of course, if you're a healer, you will definitely need these somewhere where you can see them and comfortably target them. Then, if you're a DPS player that has some party utility, like say a mage or a warlock, then, well, you can have them a bit further away, but you still do want to be able to click on them should you need to. Of course, if you're doing Mythic Plus, you should have a way to track your party's interrupts and maybe even their stuns. There are, of course, plenty of weak auras to do this, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. I would also recommend for party play a way to track specific mechanics in dungeons, so for that, look out for Little Wigs, DBM, or of course a set of weak auras that cover the dungeons that you're doing. Okay, raids. The trick here is that you really don't need that much more information for raids, right? A boss mod like DBM or Bigwigs, configured nicely of course, will give you most of what you need, but do actually open up the config and move the various different bars and panels around so that they are in tandem with the rest of your UI, so that your eyes don't need to be darting all over the place for you to see the information that you need. Another thing you can do, though, is basically just grab some raid weak auras that will basically tell you what you've got to do right now. They're a bit of a game changer, and they only take up a little bit of room, so I really would recommend them. Now, the trickiest thing is knowing what to do with raid frames, but that's pretty simple. Unless you are a healer or a raid leader, you basically just need to know their health and if they have any raid debuffs. You can have these be nice or small, wherever you want on your screen. Now, of course, if you're a healer, it's a bit different. You will want to make sure that these are somewhere where you can click on them or mouse over them while still seeing what is going around the boss and your character. So that essentially is the basic principles, but there are other things. When it comes to other stuff like chat, damage meters, the minimap, quests, etc., well, that's mostly personal preference. These things can be anywhere, but the less intrusive the better. Obsessively checking your DPS meters is not going to make you do more DPS, and that brings us on to a very important topic, and that is what you don't need to have in your UI. Because the worst part of WoW UIs throughout the years has been the signal-to-noise ratio, and I think many people have been put off having a custom UI because they're used to those extremely busy ones that just were information overload. Unless you're a raid leader, you don't need to know all the cooldowns available to your group. You definitely don't need big, over-the-board scrolling combat text. Yes, Blizzard's default text is nice for UX, can make some of your combat feel more satisfying, but using add-ons like mix scrolling battle text, well, that provides you a bunch of clutter with basically no benefit. You don't really need that stuff. To go back to our terrible Wrath of the Lich King UI as an example, you don't need to know every buff or debuff on enemies or allies. Also, things like threat meters, they're basically a thing of the past. Unless you're maybe a tank, you don't really need them. And, well, if you're looking at the DPS meter during combat, fair enough, but do keep it somewhere out of the way. You really don't need to look at it. A cleaner UI makes for a better experience. It means you can see information more easily. That will make you a better player, and it will make World of Warcraft more comfortable. So, now that we understand what a UI is for and the principles about them, let's actually go about setting ours up. Okay, so when building this is what we need to keep in mind. Make sure you only have the information you need. Anything you do not need can be either relegated to the outer parts of your screen or, ideally, can just be removed entirely. Keep that signal-to-noise ratio, well, mostly signal. Then, put information where you need to see it. Damage meters can go into the corner for a glance, but your ability cooldowns need to be close to your character so that you can see them, and also, of course, see your surroundings. Of course, keep it looking good. This is subjective, but like with keybinds, if you like how the game looks, you're actually going to enjoy playing it a bit more. And that's basically how simple it is. If you want to go into the real nerdy stuff that was produced while making this video, Matt has written up a bunch of his thoughts on good WoW UI design in a lot more depth that's available in one of the links below if you want to check that out. Now then, let's actually go through our UIs, specifically the levels of UI and where ours fit in. Level 0 is basically just the Blizzard default with some minimal changes. This is definitely playable, but it can be improved on a lot. If this is what you're playing with, I would suggest making a big change for Shadowlands. The expansion delay will give you time to make that change, and being real, you owe it to yourself to play the game in a more enjoyable way. So, let's get into it. Level 1 would be using some basic off-the-shelf improvements. This could be using the Blizzard default with an add-on like Bartender to move abilities and bars around, or maybe some of ElvUI's default setups. I would highly recommend at least doing this to keep your abilities just away from you always looking at the bottom of the screen. Looking down there all the time is going to feel extremely natural to many World of Warcraft players in the same way that clicking feels very natural to many World of Warcraft players, but once you actually commit to making that change and stick with it for a few weeks, it will feel natural, and that extra, say, half a second of awareness, that will drastically improve your performance in raids, and that'll mean you'll be less stressed. And more importantly, it'll also let you, pay attention to the rather gorgeous game that you are actually playing instead of just looking at a bunch of buttons at the very bottom of the screen. Level 2 is where we come in. This is something that is specifically well designed for most scenarios while actually remaining one size fits all, and it's where we recommend that you start. Okay, so one of our included ElvUI profiles is this, and it should be perfect for you basically no matter what you're doing. In and around the center of your screen, you have space for your very important abilities. Then, of course, if you followed our key bindings guide, then you'll also find that this setup will pretty much match what we did there very well indeed and should feel comfortable. Your unit frame is near the center so that you can make use of ElvUI's buff and debuff tracking, and the target frame is symmetrical, which looks nice and also lets you see buffs and debuffs on your target. And that basically is what you will need. Now, this is designed to be functional for any role, so I would recommend just installing it, giving it a whirl. Just go for it. If this is something that you're interested in, there will be an install guide in the link down below. Now, it is really easy. All you need to do is install ElvUI and then copy and paste some text in. Yep, it's very easy. Add-on development has came on a lot in the last while. Level 3 is effectively level 2, but with a bunch of weak auras to cut down on the noise even further. Now, if you're not sure what a weak aura is, well, basically, weak auras are, well, it's an add-on. You basically make weak auras in the add-on, weak auras, and they're essentially just highly customizable indicators on the screen. They can take almost any shape or form, and they can respond to either very simple criteria, such as a spell being on cooldown, or really insane custom logic that people can basically code. It's all very cool. Now, this can be stuff as simple as showing your ability cooldowns and your health, or it could be complex things, like, say, tracking interrupts and cooldowns across all your party members, giving you time estimates for target kills, or calculating power gains and spends based on current spell casts, and even way more. So, let's bring this back to our UI and talk about level 3 of your UI. Highly custom, perhaps spec-specific, and really fine-tuned in terms of your user experience. That's what this level of UI is. You can craft one of these yourself if you have a lot of time and patience, but that's a huge pain in the ass, so just use some simple off-the-shelf weak aura setups, and we've actually tied some of what we've done into that, so you'll see that as well. Now, the weak auras that we recommend are linked below. So some of our favorites, right, are ones like these. Afnar has got a great set for every spec, and they are just reliably fantastic. There are then others like Luxthros who also do much the same. It's really just a case of looking at the libraries of those two creators and seeing what you actually prefer. So because of that, it is worth taking a look at wago.io, which is basically the weak auras sharing site, and yeah, those guys have got their stuff there. Now also, lots lots of streamers and content creators will have their own custom weak auras available as well, though some may require you to be a Twitch sub to actually access them, so there is that to keep in mind as well. Now, if you basically want to feel what it's like at level 3, as we're calling it, then we have another LVUI profile that we have made specifically for use, along with the likes of Athanar's weak auras. So you can grab Athanar's preset weak auras for your class and spec, you can grab our LVUI profile, and they will smash together. No, they won't smash together, they'll slot together perfectly. And yes, you will be combining a great LVUI and great weak auras that follow all the principles that we laid out in this video. That will basically give you a super good, super tailored feeling WoW UI experience, essentially for free. You'll be able to set this up in 5 minutes or less. And if you're not sold, I just say, look, just run this for a week, do some dungeons, do some raids, see how it feels. I think that after switching to the setup like this and then getting the muscle memory and becoming used to it, I mean, you just won't go back. It will be a better experience. So to do this, it is easy as installing LVUI and then importing in the profiles via text, just like with the last one. Weak auras also operate similarly. Install the add-on, open up the config, and import the profile from WAGO, and that will basically be it. There is a list of weak auras below in the video description that we recommend or at least find useful. There are things like interrupt trackers and raid mechanic auras that we mentioned before that really are just invaluable and really do add to your raiding experience. Now, of course, if you would rather stick with the aesthetics of WoW's default UI, that's mostly fine. All you really need to do is move your frames around to a nice place and then make sure you've got a good place to actually put your weak auras. And if you do that, you should basically be grand. Now, if you want to do that and also want to move your action bars around the place, you can install an add-on called Bartender, and then you can use Bartender to move your bars. And that's something I would also recommend doing if you really are diehard set on sticking with the basics of Blizzard's UI. Okay, it's time for a tease. There is probably a level 4 WoW UI, right? One that involves a bunch of custom visuals, specific sound effects, and maybe training your brain based on different colored LEDs behind your monitor. But let's not go that far for today. But if you've got any ideas for a plugged into the Matrix WoW UI and what that should look like, let us know, because we might just be trying to think about what some truly gigabrain out there, totally different style WoW UIs would look like, and hey, maybe in a few months we'll be able to come back to you with some very cool things indeed. Okay, so that is it for today's video. Hopefully now you've got an idea of what a good simple WoW UI is and why you should use one. The intent of this video is to do two things. We want to, well, you know, it's that phrase about teach a man to, to fish instead of just handing him a fish. Well, no, we want to give you a fish and we also want to teach you how to fish. So learn these principles and take our basic UIs, and I would recommend then tweaking them to your own specific preferences. But our hope, of course, is that between the key bindings video and this video, you have went from a WoW setup that was just your default to one that now is better, that is more comfortable, that means that you'll be able to shine more as a player and have a better World of Warcraft experience in the future. And it's just that situation where, like with the default Blizzard key bindings, just the default WoW UI is not really that great. And yes, on a 14-inch, a 14-inch TNT, or yeah, TFT, whatever, a monitor, maybe it worked, right? When, all those things are at different corners and bits of the screen, it was a really small thing. But now we're on 27-inch monitors, You got people rocking 34-inch ultra-wides, and the WoW UI by default does not work there. That's just the sort of thing. Blizzard just can't or won't rock the boat in terms of UI, so it basically falls onto us, the players, to sort it out ourselves. And for the longest time, we really weren't doing a great job. I mean, WoW UIs were, they were busy. But I think, as you've seen in this video, the community is doing a great job. There are so many great setups out there, and it's so easy to install. So let us know what you think of our WoW UIs. Of course, if you've got different ideas, throw us some images as well. I'd love to see what everyone's cooked up. And with that said, hopefully this has helped you plan for Shadowlands and will result in you having a more enjoyable experience. Thank you for watching, and with that said, I'll see you next time.